Welcome, everyone. This is Kingdom in Context, and I'm your host, Sean Griffin. I want to thank you for joining me as we continue our 42 series. This is going to be part 20, which is actually the second installment. We're counting down to one in this series, and we're going to be discussing Babylon. This is Babylon Has Fallen. We're going to be picking up on some of the ideas from the groundwork we laid in our Investigating Babylon series as we explored the idea of what Mother Babylon is, how it applies to Satan, why it's discussed as it is in Scripture, both in Isaiah and Revelation. We're going to expound on that with great detail tonight, and I'm excited that you're here. I just want to thank everyone that's already downloaded our Kingdom in Context app, because we've got quite a few people that are interacting, and we've got over, I think, 2,000 people that have downloaded the app now. So it's pretty exciting, and I just want to encourage everyone, if you haven't already, it's very simple. It's in the Play Store. So you can go to the Play Store or the Apple Store and you can download the app. It's the Kingdom in Context app, and there's even a fellowship finder. And there's two ways to get to the fellowship finder. Okay, so we have a drop down menu when you touch the Kingdom in Context logo in the top left hand corner, and then you can find the fellowship finder there, or you can just go to the big button here, the picture that says fellowship finder on the home screen, intentionally designed for ease of access. So yes, and that way you can start to look at all the people that are already on over in the United States alone. We already have looks like over 350 people, so that's exciting. We got lots of people in Europe and South Africa and Australia, so very exciting to see scattered fam all over the earth. We're all waiting for the regathering at the resurrection. We're excited. Promise of the covenant, the return of our Messiah and King, and that is what this series is that we're looking into tonight. It's 42, Countdown to Messiah. And so that's really the point of all this information we're getting, is so that you can understand why Scripture talks about eschatology and prophecy the way it does, because it is written to a people who had the perspective, the world behind them, of the information that we're discussing in this series. They understood these terms. We don't. So let's get familiar with them. That way we can better understand the perspective they had when the prophet said something as a direct message from the Creator. So I'm very excited. Big shout out to everyone that's already in the live chat. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, moderators, for being here. As you guys have noticed in the past several months, every time we go live, we get lots of spam. So thank you, moderators, for being quick on the gun to get some of that stuff out of the live chat when it starts to happen. And everyone else, we're just really thankful that you're here, and hopefully you enjoyed tonight. So without further ado, let us get started.
And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah.
For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, None seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. None shall save thee.
This is part 20. Babylon Has Fallen. We're going to be looking at Mother Babylon, not just the historical understanding of what it is, why it became what it is, and how the enemy interacts with it, but what its future destruction is going to be. And so it's very exciting to look at this, and I'm going to just remind everyone, this is the general premise for the series, is that Revelation 13, 4 and 5, they worship the dragon who had given authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who can wage war against it? The beast was given a mouth to speak arrogant and blasphemous words, and authority to act for 42 months. So once we see the beast arrive, and that's why we're going to qualify who that is in the series, just like we did in the Investigating Babylon series, we start to see that there's 42 months from that time until the beast is stopped by the Messiah returning. So this is a very easy qualifier for us to know when we're actually in the end times versus any ramp up to that moment. Okay, so we don't have to walk in fear. And more than anything, we can really know who these characters are and recognize them when they're here. This is why Revelation is so beautiful, that it's a blessing to us to understand these things, as the book says, right? It's just a blessing because you know what you're looking at once it happens, and you don't have to be worried or speculating. You can know 100%. So we're hoping our goal is to provide that kind of assurance and that kind of confidence throughout these types of series, both our Investigating Babylon and now this 42 series. So helping people get a greater understanding of the scriptures in the context of the world in which the scriptures were given, because we see different things in our modern society today, as far as like the different decorations of clothing and different styles of houses, different styles of government buildings, different styles of boats, but all the concepts and all the concepts are the same. I mean, as far as ideological concepts and conceptual concepts, just the outward dressing of it may look a little different, but it's important to know what the concepts are, how these moving pieces are moving, if I could put it like that. And then it doesn't matter how they're dressed up, and recognize what it is. So this is, as we discussed in the Investigating Babylon series, Babylon as an empire after the Tower of Babel was now dispersed into all the different nations that spoke different languages. And as a result, they had to dress themselves up appropriately for each language to rule over them. It was, they had to make themselves relatable to that people group. And so now it became increasingly more difficult for Babylon to maintain solidarity and control throughout all the nations. And that's just on that premise alone. We haven't even gotten into all the aspects of how the Father interrupts the plans of the enemy and the proud and the wicked. So it's very exciting. We hope that you are enjoying this. And this series has been a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So if you guys like what we're doing and you want to support us and bless us, the links are in the video description below, and that way you can ensure that you keep seeing this type of content and that we can stay doing this. We really appreciate everyone that's already supported us and blessed us so far. And let's jump into this as we get going here. So the concept as a whole is that, one second. There we go. Is that there's 42 months. It's that we have the dragon is the one that we've identified as Satan. He's the one that's already reigning. He gives his authority to a beast. Now, once that beast shows up, there's a specific time qualifier for that beast to go out and do some bad things, right, before he's stopped. But a lot of people sometimes skip over the actual placement of the dragon, and this is what we've been revealing as Mother Babylon is the actual home and the abode of the dragon. So we're going to delve into more proof texts of that tonight. So it's kind of exciting. So that's why tonight we're going to be looking distinctly at the term, the idea, and the concept from ancient Egypt of the Eye of Ra. So the Eye of Ra was essentially the emblem of Ra's authority and power, and it's also the designation of his home, but most people aren't aware of that. So this was why you see this seal of the Eye of Ra on all Egyptian iconography. It was the placement of authority from the ultimate patron god worshipped in Egypt, which was Ra. We even see it conspicuously on the back of the US dollar bill above a pyramid. You guys, I'll let you guys fight in the comments about all the conspiracy theories about why that's possibly there. But there's depends on the people that designed the Great Seal of the United States, as well as this Annuitas Coeptus concept, which, from my understanding, the Annuitas Coeptus and Novus Ordo Seclorum, it's I think it means, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure it means he who sees our endeavors and approves, basically. He oversees and approves our endeavors, or something like that. But I just want to say, it's the God that you see right there. It says, "In God we trust," on the back of that bill. That's not synonymous with this pyramid and the Eye of Ra at the top of it. That is the opposite of what Scripture would say. You do not build an idol to a false god, or to a god who promotes the things that Ra promoted. So it's my speculation that the word God used on the back of the dollar bill, it's not the same God that you're thinking of. It's not the Christian God, the one of Yahweh, who's the supreme creator of heaven and earth and the angels and mankind. Now, we're going to be reading some texts where Ra claims he's a creator, and and it's so funny because in some of the texts, he actually claims that he's greater than the one who created him, which I think is the epitome of pride, right? And he's passed on that sense of entitlement to those who also reject the creator. And so it's interesting, though, that this particular back of our American dollar bill, which is for so many years been the standard of trade all around the earth, has the Eye of Ra on the back. Many of you may not be familiar with the Eye of Ra as a spherical object, and this is what we've been breaking down in great detail on Investigating Babylon, as well as the beginning of this series. We're going to go into it deeper tonight. This is also why we see in the symbolism of Ra as a sphere used all throughout the earth in different ways. Now, the spherical ball drop in Times Square in New York City every year at the beginning of the new year is an actual ancient ritual from adopted, I should say. It's adopted into a modern tradition from an ancient ritual in ancient Egypt for a midsummer's flood, when the Eye of Ra would return to the land of Egypt and create the proper flooding for the Nile for the proper harvest. And so they would look for the Eye of Ra to return over them. So symbolically, at the start of the new year, it's become a strange, unique American tradition. I think it started in 1912. For Times Square, they celebrate the new year and the prosperity of the new year by dropping a big ball down a pole. It's very interesting. The World Economic Forum has a sphere for a logo. It's actually, in my opinion, this is a sphere that's being it's part of an eclipse. We've talked about that in great detail in our Investigating Babylon series, the symbolism of the eclipse and how the Eye of Ra is actually causing the eclipse, not the moon. So this is where, if you haven't seen those, go check out our Investigating Babylon playlist, and parts 19 and 20, we go over that in great depth. I'll let you guys talk amongst yourselves about this one. Helios of ancient Greece, some things discovered in the dirt, brought up from the ancient times. This is a depiction of Helios. He was one of the gods in the Greek Trinity, if I could put it like that, underneath the authority of Zeus, which was also the Greek equivalent of Ra. And so Helios is also called Apollo to the Romans, and Apollyon, as we see it in Scripture, the Latin transliteration. And so he is he is the one that Ra shares his essence with and his power and authority, which is, as we've already distinguished in this series, he is the beast of Revelation 13, 4, and 5, who is the king over that kingdom. And a lot of people, they want to make a big deal about the prophecies of Daniel 7, Revelation 13, about they're only kingdoms that rule and reign. But guys, kingdoms have leaders who are called kings. This is why they're used interchangeably in the prophecy. And then they're spoken specifically at the end of Revelation 13 as an actual person. So it's very interesting to see the depictions as we've lined them up throughout all of history in the scriptures, from the names and the placements in history, that they're digging up spheres in archaeology with the first beast on it, who shared the authority of Ra or Zeus. So it's very, very interesting stuff. We also have very mysterious large spheres found all over the earth. This is more recent one, 2017, I believe, from Bosnia. Gentleman found one. I think he said it was like 10 feet in diameter, or no, bigger than 10 feet, like 13 feet in diameter, but massive sphere. This is him. Just, I don't have time to go into all these digs, but lots of spheres found all over the earth. And people are wondering who in the world would take the time in the ancient world to make a sphere out of pure stone. The mysterious spheres of Costa Rica, they're all over the place. En busca de verdad. I hope I said that right. Thank you so much for the super chat. Guys, I won't be able to take your questions as we're doing the show, so we'll try to do a couple questions at the end, but I got a lot of information to get to tonight, and so I'm going to do my best to try to get through those. Thank you so much for the super chat, brother. In San Juan Teotihuacan, this is in Mexico, at the Temple of the Sun complex, where there's additional temples there, and they're all in ziggurat pyramid style. This is the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, which is Quetzalcoatl, right? Which is the person that we've identified as the Ra character in the Mayan religion. As remember, we talked about Babylon spread out in the different languages. They all worship the same pantheon of gods under different names because they spoke different languages. So then you can identify through their behaviors, their enforcement, and their theology, how it's all the same gods. And so the Temple of the Feathered Serpent for Quetzalcoatl, he's the same one that the Mayans worshipped. He has a large complex built to him, as you can see on the left. An archaeological dig done in the last 5 years revealed these massive underground tunnels under the temple, as well as all these. There was apparently hundreds of metallic spheres that are kind of like encased in clay and things. So it's very interesting stuff. Very interesting. So let's take a quick look at some symbolism that we see of the Eye of Ra and the concept as a whole in modern media because it's everywhere. It's truly amazing just how much it's layered into everything all the time. It's scary, but it's amazing at the same time. So let me find this real quick. One second. Okay, so this is, there we go. So this is a movie, came out several years ago, 2009. It's with Nicolas Cage. It's called The Knowing. And it was basically about strange occurrences happening. At the end of it, you see these aliens show up and take these kids away. I think it's fascinating because of what these aliens are doing when they come to show up and take these kids away. It's not normal. They show up in a big sphere that has these unique holes in it. And then the aliens themselves turns into these beings of light with these very hard to see wings on the back of them. Take them off, take these children to another planet that emulates the idea of Adam and Eve starting over on another planet. But they, of course, show up in this massive sphere. We won't go through all of it, but here. So he's watching this sphere go up. It's encased in another sphere. Encased in another sphere. In a unique crystal-like shape that then folds itself before it travels, and then it takes off, creating a sense of anti-gravity, and it takes off into the fake model of heliocentricity. So what's interesting, though, is that this is not an uncommon thing. We're going to be looking at several different examples tonight, how aliens are continually spoken of, talked about, portrayed in videos, music, comics. This concept of what the Eye of Ra is has been shown to us in more ways than most people know. I know it seemed like a big reveal in the Investigating Babylon series to express that it was a literal sphere that is the home of Satan. Not only are we going to go over, like I said, texts that talk about that from ancient Egypt, but we're also going to talk about the personifications of the sphere. And it wasn't always the form that it took. So it is a home in one right, but then there would be the sense of how he would send it out to go do stuff for him. So it's very interesting, the personifications of this actual sphere concept that was considered the Eye of Ra, which is why we see it in the sky as the all-seeing eye. So it's very, very interesting. So let's look at some other concepts. I'm going to talk through these. I'm not going to play the sound because the sound will get me taken down, but I will I'll talk about them as we review them real quick because it's just fascinating all the different ways that here, let me just go here. All the different ways that media has shown us. And this is just a small collection of clips that I brought to the table. There's more out there, but I just thought I'd bring a few to show folks. And so let me pull this up here. And I'm going to kind of explain what these clips are, where I got them, that kind of stuff as we go through them. Okay. So 2016, Independence Day, movie called Resurgence, starts off people going into or zooming in on a black planet, which actually you realize, oh, it's just the moon. But then this black sphere shows up on the moon and they try to attack it. They destroy it. And another smaller sphere escapes from this big, larger sphere. This is 2011. This is Katy Perry and Kanye West put out a song called E.T. And it's Kanye West flying in a big sphere coming down to the earth. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Many of us have seen this in the news recently. A lot of you in the audience have been wanting me to talk on this, but this is the Commonwealth Games this past summer in England. I believe this was held in London, and it's a strange ritual that they performed to open up the competition for the games, where they brought in this big automaton, metal bull. People worshipped it. The metal bull itself then points a light on the ball that comes out of the fake Tower of Babel and ascends above the Tower of Babel, just like we've been expounding upon with this whole series of Investigating Babylon, as well as 42, just the placement of the Eye of Ra, that it is an actual sphere, that it was above the tower, higher than the actual tower, but it was a part of the construction, in my opinion, a part of the construction of the tower as well. So they did an entire ritual in the Commonwealth Games to explain that, to show that. But that same symbolism of the sphere, which is the house of Ra, the house of Zeus, the house of the Hebrew Satan, is an actual sphere. It is symbolized in so many other some forms of media. This is actually a typo. Sorry, guys. This is 1997, a movie with Lawrence Fishburne called Event Horizon. And again, it's about space. There's a sphere in an alien ship. They go find this ship that was lost for 7 years, and then they find the sphere inside the ship, and it starts terrorizing the people. And it basically is the source of the haunting of the ship because of the magic that it holds, as well as the Matrix Revolutions. This is very interesting. 2003. I was a huge fan of the Matrix when it first came out because I thought it was, revolutionary, both cinematography, the concept of integrating. I didn't realize it was a whole bunch of Gnostic concepts being integrated. I thought it paralleled scripture concepts because I was very weak in my scriptural knowledge way back then, 1998 and 2000. But by the time the 2003, I'm going to go back to that real quick. By the time the 2003 Matrix Revolutions came out, and at the end of the story of this trilogy, Neo is out of the Matrix and he goes back to the real world where the machines have taken over, and he thinks that he has to give his body that was grown by the machine world that had taken over mankind. He has to give it back to the source, as they talk about it. And then he goes to talk to the source to say, hey, I want to re-input my body and the code inside my body into the system to fix your bug in the system, which was, the Agent Smith. And so the source is represented as a massive sphere that comes up to talk to him. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting. But it's very easy to discern this stuff once we understand these concepts, as we've been expounded upon through this series. And of course, the face of this thing looks like a little cherub angel. Guardians of the Galaxy in 2017, they did their volume 2. Ego, the Living Planet, which was this father of Star-Lord. He actually expresses how his brain became the planet that he now lives in and inhabits. It's very interesting symbolism there. Also, this was a fun movie when I was in high school. This was a favorite back in the day, The Fifth Element. And it was 1997. There's this massive ominous sphere approaching outer space, and they try to attack it. And it ends up just getting worse, right? There's nothing that can beat it other than, the actual Fifth Element, and you have to watch the movie to understand all that. But the idea is in synonymous sphere, and as it destroys this spaceship, it's going to shoot out a fireball with the symbol of Hades, which is part of that unholy trinity we've been talking about. It's going to shoot out a fireball. Here it goes, boom, and another symbolism of Ra, Hades, Osiris, the whole crew in a sphere, the whole idea. Now, I'm not saying the first and second beast are in the sphere now. We're going to talk about, but it's all symbolized through it. Rogue One, the Star Wars story, 2016. The eclipse is created. The Death Star creates the eclipse, hovering over the planet while it attacks. We're going to read some concepts from ancient Egyptian literature as Ra sent out his Eye of Ra to go attack people for rebellion. The First Descendant. Now, this is a wild one, guys. This is a new game that's coming out, and this is just, it's wild. It's coming out supposedly this year, but it may be pushed to next year. But it's a loot and shoot kind of game, and as you can see, the triple ring sphere at the heart of this enemy base, as well as the pyramid in the background. You see the massive sphere with the changing outer skin, almost looks like dragon scales on the outer skin that we just saw in the first clip coming down over the destroyed land. It is prepping the nations, prepping the people for the revelation of the sphere. And it's in all this, as you can see, much clearer at the end of this. This is a video game. And the idea is that this massive sphere, black sphere specifically, is coming down. You can see the size of it in comparison. Here's a Russian movie. A lot of you guys may have seen this in 2017. It's called Attraction. Big sphere comes into airspace. They shoot it down. And we're going to talk about the scriptures that parallel this idea as it is descending with fire. Goes over a city. I'm going to skip forward to some of this real quick for copyright. Sorry. So the copyright doesn't get me. But, it hurts people on the way, busts through a city. Big massive sphere crashing to the ground. It's wild. All right, so this is an interesting one. This is back in 2013. It's called BioShock Infinite. The whole premise was there was a city in the sky that people lived in 1912 called Columbia that had massive statues somehow in the sky as well, but all the livable land was connected. And there was a, it was a role-playing game. You had to go figure out the story, and you had to protect this girl. And so all the elements that we've been talking about are in this game. Ra as the head old wise god that people have to go talk to, who's created the religion of this place in the sky. That's the guy in the picture, in the circular picture right there. They're all kneeling to, as well as the automatons are there. The Nephilim are there. The idea of, living in the sky is there ultimately, as well as Talos. You remember we talked about Talos, the guardian of Ra. And he's in the form of like a vulture, which is, it's kind of like the hawk, almost like a hawk, right? This is what we see associated with Ra in ancient Egypt. So it's fascinating, prepping people for this idea, like we've been talking about, that they want people to actually live in the sky. This was something called the second outbreak. An ominous sphere shows up. People are trying to deal with it and overcome it. Very interesting symbolism. Again, it's another sphere that shows up. And this was a unique movie from 2015 called Tomorrowland. Now, Tomorrowland was about this alternate reality that very smart people had built back in the 60s. And that, they give out a pen to the right young prodigies to try to find this alternate science fiction land that has this amazing technology. But what's so fascinating about it is, so this ball that they're flying by here was connected to this large tower, very reminiscent of the Tower of Babel, all the same symbolism. Tower of Babel with a massive sphere connected to it. So this thing that's falling, as you can see, what's interesting about this, and I'm not reviewing the whole movie tonight, is when they go inside the sphere that's now being destroyed and falling, that they realize the whole purpose of this sphere is to control it. It's supposedly it's fake movie. It's a science fiction movie, but the idea is that it can absorb the fear from the actual real world. Remember, they're in an alternate reality at this Tomorrowland, all this advanced science, but the sphere absorbs the fear of mankind throughout the nations from the real world, and then makes it a self-fulfilling prophecy through advanced manipulation and some sort of power that's not really explained. So the sphere itself is reacting and orchestrating based off the fear of mankind, also showing mankind, because it's basically receiving their fear and then showing it back to them as far as this is where it'll take you, and this is what's going to happen in the future as a result. It's a very much a climate change movie dedicated to get people aware of climate change concepts and that indoctrination. And it's just interesting to see the collective, it absorbs the collective conscious fear of the people, replays it back to them in an ominous doomsday. And so therefore the world is in disarray, you know what I'm saying, emotionally. And so they have to try to stop this sphere, but they realize that the problem is that this sphere has been causing this problem. So they have to try to stop it. It's very interesting. And of course, he throws an AI robot into it to stop it. Keanu Reeves, 2008. This was a remake from like a 1960s movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Big, massive green sphere shows up to the Earth. More recent, Age of Ultron, Avengers movie, 2015. The AI robot, Ultron, pulls a massive city into the air and tries to drop it. The Avengers try to go destroy it before it can actually fall in one piece and create a massive earthquake and destroy the Earth. Very, very interesting. We see the Great Reward in The Phantom Menace. This is a horror movie from 1999. Sorry for the Star Wars fans out there. Great Reward was this sphere that was offered from Queen Amidala, and everyone's excited about it. Yay! Here's the sphere from the Independence Day movie that pulled out of the big black sphere that they destroyed near the moon. Now this one's on Earth, and it's supposedly their friend to help them from the other aliens that are coming. This was another movie from 1998. I actually read the book to this. It's a Michael Crichton book. So I used to like to read when I was younger. I still like to read, but I used to like to read fictional books when I was younger a lot. So Michael Crichton and the Sphere, the whole idea is that I'm going to pause it real quick. The whole idea is that they go to the bottom of the sea where there's a ship that's been discovered, partially buried in the seabed. And so they go into the ship, and they're like it's a massive ship that they realize is not a sea vessel. It's actually a space vessel. And they realize it's, according to the narrative of the movie, it's from the future. It's from 2050 in the future. And that it's got advanced, advanced tech. And they go into the cargo hold of this ship, and they realize there's this massive sphere there, and that the sphere seems to be sentient because it's not reflecting their shadows, and they're all mesmerized by this massive gold sphere. And wasn't that interesting? What did they find in Teotihuacan? Underneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, Quetzalcoatl, they found hundreds of metallic gold spheres. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if there's some correlation. Wait, but this movie was written in 1998, and that discovery wasn't until the last 5 years in 2017. Huh. I guess it was just a good guess by Michael Crichton. So anyway, so what's unique about this movie, The Sphere, is not only do they have this sphere here, but it starts to affect them and kind of haunt the ship, if you will. Yes, this movie came out literally a year after that other movie, Event Horizon, where there's a sphere that haunts the ship. It's just that, they put these types of things in movies all the time. Nobody really notices it because there's other parts of the movies that you're enamored with. Or as we go later into the breakdown of the Eye of Ra and what ancient Egyptians talked about the Eye of Ra, we're going to look at another clip from an alternate ending to this movie that was not published in theaters. But because I'm a nerd, I remembered that the ending of this movie in the theaters was not like the ending to the book. And so you had to, they published this movie in like a 4-part series as like a mini series on TV. And that's when they published the alternate ending, where you actually see Dustin Hoffman and, what's his name? Anyway, that we're going to see in a minute, but they're having a discussion about the sphere at the end of it. That's in the book, and how that the powers, the magical powers the sphere gave them, how they can get rid of them. It's very interesting because it lines up with ancient Egyptian theology about the Eye of Ra. So it's pretty fascinating. So the sphere was as a kid who didn't understand all this, I just thought it was an amazing science fiction book, but there's so much more to it. So yeah, it basically gives them the power to make their thoughts come true, to manifest their thoughts. So What If episode 18 is animated Marvel concept where Ultron actually beats the Avengers and then gets in the ship that's a sphere and starts attacking other planets. The Watch, they find a sphere. This is just a silly neighborhood watch movie. These dads find this sphere and realize it's a massive, powerful weapon they can shoot things with. Very, very silly movie, but the symbolism's there. Now, this is crazy, guys. So this is just a wild one. This is a guy that's been going around for 5 or 6 years, and he's a DJ. He's got this holographic sphere around his DJ table inside of the lights that shape of an eye. And this is the shape that he creates with his holographic sphere in different versions of this black technosphere. And he calls the tour Tomorrowland, like the movie. And the people are praising and dancing and worshiping. I shouldn't say worshiping, right? That's not the technical biblical definition of work. The people are having a great time raving out to the sphere. They love when the sphere does different projections and holographs. And of course, he always shows you it's see-through, really, and just flying through space. Very interesting. All right, so this is another depiction from a more modern 2020. It's called The Heretic. It's a Unity game that came out. And as you can see, I'm going to try to pause it real quick. Now this, what's interesting about this, I didn't have time to show you it's not a game, excuse me. It's a short film. I didn't have time to show the entire film in this montage that I created. But this guy with the briefcase, he comes to this cave area because he was in like a major city going through an abandoned building and found an underground railroad. And then he touches some technology that's attached to his arm because it's kind of like transhumanist ideals. And it changes, it takes him to an alternate reality where the tunnel that was a train track now becomes this cave that he walks to the end of the cave, and it opens up into this vast land where there's a massive construct, like a massive palace. As you can see at the top of the palace, you've got the two towers, like kind of the ears of Anubis around this sphere. And there's even another sphere and what looks like some sort of planet in the background. So 2 other circular spherical objects in the background. So it's amazing. All the symbolism is here about him going to this unseen realm where there's a massive palace, and who he's going to meet at this palace is, of course, very interesting. So he goes into this massive, and it looks kind of dilapidated and old, but it's just that no one's there. It's become a haunt for every unclean bird. You saw that unclean bird fly by. Very, very, very Isaiah-ish. But then he gets into the inner sanctum of this palace, and he sees this massive giant in front of these concentric spherical rings amongst the stars, or what looks like stars. And this thing walks towards him, and the briefcase he has in his hand, he lifts it to extend this to this shape-shifting. This is the description of angels who lives in the sphere. It's Ra, Satan, and then it turns into a Satan character as he's telling this guy, give me this case. And as he hands the case to him, he's going to drop it, and this entity, which we're just called Ra, he kills the guy to grab the case as fast as possible. On the case is the symbol of the phoenix. And that's going to be in a couple episodes from now, or next episode, we'll talk about the phoenix. And then as he's standing there admiring the phoenix, we see that this particular person, then a unclean bird comes up to him. An owl comes up to him. What do we know about the owls? What have we talked about the owls? But it's like a technotronic owl. Comes up to him and then transforms and does something very unique with this dead body. As the Ra character is intrigued as what's happening. He's like, I just killed this mere mortal. What's going on here? And then this thing is being revived into a messenger, otherwise known as an angel. Like an angel of the abyss, the messenger of the abyss is called Apollyon. The phoenix, who serves under the authority of Satan or Ra. Very interesting stuff. So this that's just a few little concepts. Thank you so much, Carl, for the super chat. I really appreciate that, brother. That's just a few of the concepts that we see just in throughout time. I mean, that's just been the last 20, 25 years. There's so many more concepts throughout artwork, throughout Masonic tracing boards, throughout ancient statues. We've reviewed some of those in the Investigating Babylon series, but they're everywhere, guys. It's just truly, they're everywhere. But let's go back to our presentation real quick. 1 second. Okay. So we're going to be talking about and explaining how the ancient Egyptians described the eye of Ra itself. So as we can see, the sphere with the two cobras around it inside the wings, this is what they called the winged eye of Ra, and it was a personification of Isis. This is why sometimes you just see the wings with the sphere. Other times you see Isis with the wings and the sphere above her head with the horns. So this was a common personification of the eye of Ra. Isis was also talked about to be the sister of the sister of Osiris. Osiris was the equivalent of Apollo in ancient Egypt. And so you see this, now whether she was a real person or not is irregardless. It's what they've attributed to her after her death. All the personification, they've adopted her name, and other names of other female goddesses they've adopted to the eye of Ra. We're going to discuss some of those as well. But Isis, usually the companion of Osiris, not Ra, also named Astarte as a deity of fertility and warfare who was imported from Canaan rather than native to Egypt, is also equated with the solar eye. So it's interesting that even the historians, when talking about Isis and how she is a representative of the eye of Ra, they say, oh, it's commonly known that Egypt imported the idea of Isis from Astarte from Canaan, the land of Canaan, closer to the Hittites, the Amorites, the Phoenicians, all the guys who were part of Babylon as well, going down to the Chaldeans and the Assyrians. So like we've talked about in previous installments, they all worship the same pantheon of gods. They just had different representations of them according to whatever their people were more accustomed to. So Isis, I guess what I'm trying to hopefully get you to understand, don't get caught up in the fact that it's depicted as a woman, because it's clearly told you in the text there's different versions of what they call personifications of the Eye of Ra, the solar disk, the Eye of Ra. Sometimes it was sent to the earth as a goddess, as a feminine goddess, and that had different attributes to that feminine goddess that is intrinsically described into the theological belief set about the Eye of Ra and what it meant and how it was related to Ra itself. So Isis is considered the daughter of Ra. The Eye of Ra is considered the daughter of Ra as well. So just to kind of help you understand that. There's other personifications like Hathor, which was like a feline cat, like a cougar or a panther, was and this was her human form, but sometimes she's personified as a feline and sometimes as a serpent, other times even as a cow. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So, I know it seems like a silly joke saying she was a heifer, but the idea is that they would, depending on the story they needed to try to teach to enforce the people for obedience, they would teach a personification of the Eye of Ra in a human form or a animal form in different ways. She's also closely linked with the goddess Mehet Weret and Nekbet, a vulture goddess, and closely connected with the Wajet, which is the eye itself, and the crowns of Egypt. So it's very interesting to see Hathor was the female goddess personification of the Eye of Ra alongside Isis. So let's look at a quick thing, a quick little video here from 2013, I believe. I think that's when this music video came out with Katy Perry again. She's got all kinds of symbolism in her videos. But this is 1 second. Why is it not? Let's try this again. There we go. Going to turn the sound off, but the whole music video is broken. Is Katy Perry in the ancient past? You see the feline goddess representations of Isis next to an actual human form representation of Isis, which is played by Katy Perry in this. She's got the Eye of Ra literally spray painted on her hair. She's traveling on the boat of Ra. We're going to talk about that later as well. And of course, the symbolism, if you go back to the very beginning, the symbolism at the top, you can actually see the Eye of Ra surrounded by the two serpents at the top of the little boat, little house on the boat there. So this is just part of it. It gets deeper as she starts going into the song. The song itself is talking about, be careful if you want this magic, because once the magic gets in you, you can't get away, basically. The song is, the lyrics by themselves are extremely demonic, but this is a very popular song that came out back in the day. And let's see if I can skip forward a little bit. There's this, let me see here. So when he walks up to her sitting in front of this pharaoh, and he's going to present gifts to her, and look what's behind her. It's so fascinating. Not only do you have the representations of Hathor next to her, but you got the serpent on her head. She's wearing the winged solar disk of Ra, or the Eye of Ra in a winged form, on her necklace. But it also has the sphere with the little line in it, just like those little spheres in the movies that we were seeing. It looks like a power sign almost, right? And this is the depiction of the Eye of Ra, the solar disk of Ra. That's just everywhere throughout Egyptian hieroglyphs. Yeah, there's so much nonsense in here. Tons and tons of, I'm not going to break everything down here, but the Eye of Ra is everywhere. This is all about the power. She even shoots out lightning at one point, kills somebody as if she had a vajra in her hand. You have the Egyptian Trinity that was focused on, that's shown there on the front of that cart. And then here in a minute, she's going to ascend up to the top of a pyramid, which is exactly what we looked at in the back of the bill. Is a common idea that the Eye of Ra will be at the top of the authority structure of ancient Egypt. We're going to talk about that as well. So there's a ton in this. Here's where she goes up to the top of the pyramid, I believe. So if you knew what you're looking at in ancient, hopefully tonight, as we look at this, it becomes more clear the things I'm trying to explain about how ancient Egypt personified the Eye of Ra in a female form goddess. So then when you see this female goddess ascending to the top of the pyramid, it's the same as the Eye of Ra being placed, the sphere of Ra being placed at the top of a pyramid, like we see in other depictions. So every time you see Isis or Hathor or Bast or any of these other female feline goddesses, or their equivalents in Greek literature or Roman literature, or Astarte and Asherah to the Canaanites. That's their female personification of the Eye of Ra, the home of Satan. This is like a massive thing, guys. Hopefully this like, so if you, so for the people that would say, Sean, your investigating Babylon series was very interesting, but man, when you got to the end of it, I just can't get on board with that. That's a crazy conclusion that you came to, and I just don't know if I could fully understand that. But then when I show you from their actual culture that their idea of what the sphere, the home of Satan floating in the sky, was personified as a female goddess on the ground, and then suddenly you see that everywhere in Scripture, and they're worshiping it. And then now you know why they made a big deal about it. Excuse me, guys. Okay, let me jump in this real quick. Another personification of the Eye of Ra in ancient Egypt was something called Satis. All right, so we've already talked about Hathor. We talked about Isis. There was another female goddess called Satis. And she was the deified form of the star of the same name and represented Ma'at. We're going to talk about what Ma'at was in a minute. And the personification of cosmic order, who was connected with the eye because she was said to be the daughter of Ra as well. Okay, so this concept is that the cosmic order, the as we talked about before, what did we talk about that word from Ephesians 6:12? We even reviewed it again last time in part 21 of this series. We reviewed it again, the cosmic order that's being referred to, this idea in the Greek that Paul uses in Ephesians 6:12 to talk about the rulers and the cosmic powers. It's this Greek word cosmos kratos. I'm so sorry. One second, guys. I've got to cough. So cosmos kratos is a word that was defined as the sublunary world, the world in the sky above, where the spiritual powers were, and Satan himself, who's over those unclean spirits. So in the occult religions of the nations, then they would have a personification for that concept. And that personification for that concept is the Eye of Ra. So it's going to make sense in a minute when we see the messengers, those who are under Ra's control, the angels of Ra. They're not angels of heaven from above the firmament, but they're the unclean spiritual beings that are under Satan's control, are then cast down with him because they're hanging out, going to and fro that place as well. And this particular personification, this particular symbol that is a star, it was the actual origination of the word Sirius, from where now modern astrologers or astronomers have labeled a star, the Sirius star. In the past, it used to be associated with the Eye of Ra, the star Sirius. It wasn't a normal star. And now it was connected to, also as a point of authority, it was placed into the concept of, it also was the symbol of the cosmic order. So that means Ra and all the unclean spirits that were under his control. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Guys, these are gods that the people of the New Testament knew 100% about. You know, in Acts chapter 21 or 22, Paul is addressing the crowd, and he's addressing them in Greek, or I think in Hebrew, and then he has to ask them, oh, wait, do you guys speak Greek? Do you want me to speak to you in Greek? This is a Greek-speaking world the first century Judeans lived in. The Greeks had all the same pantheon as Egypt. They just called them by different names. The Romans came in and adopted the same pantheon as the Greeks and were worshiping during the days of first century Judea. The disciples, including Paul, who wrote Ephesians, that famous passage in Ephesians 6:12, Ephesus, which was in Anatolia, just south of the Amazon kingdom, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, they knew 100% who these gods were and what these names meant and what this concept of Cosmos Kratos meant. which was the ruler, the evil one, and those unclean spirits under his control, who lived in the air and ruled over the nations. It's pretty amazing. So we see in hieroglyphs, Masonic tracing boards, as well as other concepts have been found. The Sirius star is depicted as an actual 5-pointed star, sometimes 6-pointed, depends on what it is, but it's always the star, and it's always usually at the top or in correlation with something as the authority structure. Yeah, there's a satellite radio company called Sirius, the dog with the star for an eye. Appropriate if you're going off the mythos. It's interesting. But then we have this famous hieroglyph from ancient Sumeria, where this clearly giant king has his normal size servants walking up to him, and it shows the depiction of a star being upheld by what looks like another ruler hanging over, holding it up with strings. So all this symbolism is always here. So when you're wondering where's the Eye of Ra in ancient busts or ancient hieroglyphs, it's right there. It's the Sirius star. It's this Satis. It's the star. Now, the personification of cosmic order in India, in ancient Sanskrit, is the divine essence that's venerated as the manifestation of primordial cosmic energy. Because this is something interesting I picked up after researching so much of this stuff, is that the ancient cultures would talk about the primordial concept being what they believe was from the beginning. But the more I read about it, I read about it in the context of how they talk about it, the more I just think, oh, this was the transition of the unclean spirits that were still here after the flood, that are now under Satan's control. And so he refers to them as primordial because they were with him from the very, very beginning, not just the great reset of the flood. So it's very interesting. Of course, there are cosmic energies that are represented by a female divine goddess, just like the Egyptians, the Romans, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Greeks. They all had a female goddess that represented this unique consort of Ra, also considered the daughter of Ra, also considered a personification of the power of Ra, and specifically the powers that he held over the things in the air, the unclean spirits. It's very interesting. Shakti is called the Divine Mother in ancient Sanskrit Hindu theology. Artemis and Diana, more famous names that we've heard from Greek and Roman goddesses who have the same attributes and qualities. Here's an interesting quote from one of the things written about Artemis and Diana. It's very interesting. She says, "I come, Lucius, moved by your entreaties. I, the mother of the universe, mistress of all the elements," that's ruling over the cosmic energies, "and firstborn of the ages, highest of the gods, queen of the shades." Guys, what does the shades mean? The shadim. In the Hebrew, that would be the word shadim, which is another word for the unclean spirits. I believe it's found in Deuteronomy. Oh man, I think it's found in Jeremiah 27 or 17. I have to go back and look it up. First of those who dwell in heaven, representing in one shape all gods and goddesses. My will controls the shining heights of heaven, the health-giving sea winds, and the mournful silences of hell. The entire world worships my single Godhead in 1,000 shapes, the diverse rites, and under many a different name. The Phrygians, firstborn of mankind, call me the Pesnuntian mother of the gods. The native Athenians, the Cecropian Minerva. The Athenians call her the Cecropian Minerva. The island-dwelling Cypriots call her Paphian Venus. The archer Cretans call her Dictanon Diana, and the triple-tongued Sicilians call her Stygian Proserpine. I can't say all these words, sorry guys. The ancient Eleusinians call her Actian Ceres, and some call me Juno, some Belana, others Hecate, others Rhamnusia. But both races of Ethiopians, those on whom the rising and those on whom the setting sun shines, and the Egyptians who excel in ancient learning, honor me with the worship which is truly mine, and call me by my true name, Queen Isis. So this is from an ancient novel, basically. I mean, they call it like a novel, but it was like a book written about the gods from ancient Egypt. It's very, very fascinating. So in modern times, we have all these elements of the personification of the Eye of Ra through female goddesses. We have them shown to us in different forms of media, like I've been sharing with you. One of them came through comic books, through the Wonder Woman comic book. And then she lived on an island that could move itself, and this island was called the Mascara. So Diana, that's the Artemis and Diana, right? So the Roman version of Artemis, which was Diana, is literally the name of the Wonder Woman character in the comics, and now in modern movies. This woman named Diana, who lives on an unseen island. Now, in the comics, the origination of this island was that it could move its location, and that its location was undisclosed. And as a security measure, the island can shift its location over both land and time, remaining undetectable from the perspective of any outside observer. And as soon as anyone leaves the island, they forget its location. So I think that's, well, that's appropriate, right? But let's look real quick at just a small little clip here of one of the modern movies of Wonder Woman that came out a few years ago, where the people are finding her unseen home. I'm going to mute it for you, and we'll skip ahead a little bit. But this is where the protagonist, the Chris Pine character, he flies through the invisible barrier and crashes, and then she sees it, and she goes to swim and help him. But then you go further, and you've got these guys that think that they're in a big fog, but then they come up to the barrier. Let me do this back a little bit. So they think that they're traveling through a fog, and they're trying to find where Chris Pine's airplane went, until they actually get to the edge of the invisible barrier that's shielding this island. So this is part of the mythos of the Eye of Ra, which is personified as a Diana character to the Romans, or Artemis to the Greeks. And then, of course, he gets through the barrier and sees, oh my gosh, it's an entire island that was hidden from us. It was cloaked. Very interesting concept. So the idea, what I think was fascinating about this is because in the Roman storytelling of Diana, is that very similar to the movie with Chris Pine and Gal Gadot that came out a few years ago, is that Chris Pine accidentally stumbles upon her and reveals and sees her. But in the ancient lore of ancient Diana from the Romans, that this hunter character accidentally stumbled onto where she was secretly bathing in the woods, and she had this secret grotto that no one knew about, that was hidden. And while he was hunting, he accidentally found this place and saw her swimming naked, and then she ends up killing him as a result of this. And because she didn't want her little paradise to be found. So all the symbolism is there about who she is and what she is, and she wants to remain unseen. And so as the idea was, she didn't want anyone to know, so she has to kill this guy so he can't tell anyone else where her secret little paradise grotto is. Similar to the comic version that anyone that leaves this island immediately forgets about it. So let's look real quick we'll look into the alternate ending of this movie, The Sphere, which is pretty fascinating. And we're going to try to listen to as much as we can, hopefully without getting the stream cut for copyright reasons, because the conversation they're having in this is wild and relevance to everything that we've been talking about. Okay, 1 second.
This gift.
Yes, can't hear it, can you?
Dreams come true. We're given the greatest gift in the history of mankind.
Can't hear it. Oh no. Why can't you hear it? Let's try this again.
Yeah. This gift, the power to make your dreams come true. We're given the greatest.
Yes. Tell me in the chat. Can you hear this? Sound is good, he says. Okay, I can't even hear it, so that's weird. Hang on a second. Let's try this again.
Greatest gift in the history of mankind. we're given this magic ball, and it says, imagine what you will, and you can have it. It's an extraordinary gift, but we're so primitive. We manifested the worst in us because what we have inside us is what we have inside of us instead.
All right, so it may be a little hard to hear. What he's talking about is that they've been rescued by the Navy because everyone else was killed in this movie, and they've been rescued by the Navy, and they're being brought up and decompressed so they don't get the bends from being brought up to the surface too fast. And while they're in there decompressed and they're talking amongst themselves, saying, "What are we going to file in our report? Because if we tell them this metallic sphere is down there in this at the bottom of the ocean, in this ship from the future, that this sphere gives us the power to manifest our own thoughts and make our own reality. We can't trust the world with this because you saw what just happened at the bottom of the ocean. We just manifested our fears and it killed everybody." So they're like, how can we get rid of the knowledge of this sphere? And I apologize because the audio just seems to not, I can't even barely hear it. The audio is so bad. What he's going to say at the end of this is that, and I'm not going to play all 5 minutes for you. What he's going to say at the end of what they collectively agree, both Sharon Stone, Dustin Hoffman, and Samuel Jackson, they agree that they're going to use the power the sphere gave them to manifest reality. And they're going to use it on themselves to manifest that they perpetually forget that the sphere exists. And that's how they save the world from extinction. It's it's just amazing.
That's what does that say about us? We weren't ready, though. We have what's called an imagination. I mean, look what we're capable of. We can.
I'll pause it a little bit for copyright, just in case it tries to cut off the stream. If you play too much copyrighted material at once, it'll cut off the stream. So let's see if I can play a little bit more.
We're not ready.
So they get together, they hold hands, they collectively agree to forget that they have the sphere, the knowledge of the sphere. So they do like a little seance. But then at the end of this thing, the sphere itself pops up out of the water and flies into space. So now they don't remember the conversation about the sphere because they just forgot about it. And then the sphere comes out of the water and flies back into outer space. And it's a gold sphere. Yeah, it's fascinating. All of the symbolism has been built into these concepts every time it's introduced, whether it's in the personification of an actual sphere or one of the female goddesses. So guys, just as a reminder to understand, every time you see one of these female goddesses that is in ancient cultures associated with the Eye of Ra as being a human goddess form of this object, just as we read from that quote, from this novel, it's ancient Roman novel about Diana, is that she has 1,000 shapes that she can take, but she all comes from one shape, and then she has 1,000 names she goes by, and all the world comes under her authority and rules from under her. She's the queen of the shades, which is the shadim, the unclean spirits in heaven above, and she exists in the heavenly lights. So it's amazing. People are asking what movie that was. It's the movie Sphere from 1998. So let's go back into our presentation real quick. Isis is the Egyptian version of Artemis, who was the Greek version of Diana, who was the Roman version of Astarte. And Astarte is from Canaan, or from the Phoenicians. Also the Akkadians, the Assyrians. Jeremiah 44, 15 through 16, a famous passage. Then all the men who knew that their wives were burning incense to other gods, and all the women standing by, is a great assembly, along with all the people living in the land of Egypt and in Pathros, said to Jeremiah. So this is a whole bunch of people here's the context, not just in Judea, but from Egypt and Pathros, the upper and lower kingdom of Egypt. So that means they are familiar with who the Egyptian gods are. They know who Isis is. Okay. Jeremiah 44, 15 through 16. They all say to Jeremiah, as for the word you've spoken to us in the name of Yahweh, we will not listen to you. Instead, we will do everything we vowed to do. We will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and offer drink offerings to her, just as we, our fathers, our kings, and the officials did in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. And at that time, and here's where it's going to be interesting. At that time, we had plenty of food and good things, and we saw no disaster. But from the time we stopped burning incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to her, we've lacked everything and have been perishing by sword and famine. So they're actually blaming their misfortune off of them trying to repent and worship Yahweh and not Isis. So let's go into this idea of Ma'at. And this is why they say this. And because of another personification of the Queen of Heaven, of Isis, of the Eye of Ra itself is Ma'at. So not only did we just read about people in Judea and also some of the Jews that came up from Egypt that had already dispersed in the Assyrian dispersion, and now Jeremiah is trying to get them all to repent, even though they're already dispersed. They're saying, nope, we're good. We're fine worshiping Isis, the Queen of Heaven, the female goddess, the embodiment of the Eye of Ra, the home of Satan. We're fine worshiping that. And our wives are burning incense and baking cakes to her, and we don't care. And we're going to continue to fulfill our vows to that goddess because she brings us fortune. She brings us prosperity. She brings us, good things. Okay. Protection. That are the things that are offered by Me'at, a female personification of the Eye of Ra. So the ancient Egyptian concepts of truth, balance, order, harmony, law, morality, and justice. In Me'at, it was also the goddess who personified these concepts and regulated the stars and the seasons and the actions of mortals and the deities who had brought order from chaos at the moment of creation. So you would think she's describing the law of God, but they're not. This is the twisted version. This is why the people in rebellion can look to Egypt and start worshiping their gods, because these concepts have been stolen from the Creator, passed down from Noah, and just repurposed, twisted. Okay? Pharaohs are often depicted with the emblems of Ma'at to emphasize their roles in upholding the laws and righteousness. Well, guys, I promise you, this is not the laws of Yahweh, and this is not the right behavior, the righteousness of Yahweh, as expounded to us through the prophets of Yahweh and the Torah and the law of God, right? So this is not that. This is the Egyptian version of that. And they called it, personified it of a god coming from the Eye of Ra, from the authority of the Eye of Ra, and they called it a female god Ma'at. And from the 18th dynasty is from some of this information came. So that's long time ago. That's a long time ago. We're talking the days of, I think, this would be like 1550 to 1295 BC. I mean, this is like in the days of the judges, days of Joshua and Moses. Ma'at was described as the daughter of Ra, indicating that pharaohs were believed to rule through her authority. Okay, so imagine the sphere is the physical home that he exists and travels in and hides in, the unseen paradise land. Its personification of how people understand it and worship it on the earth is in the form of a female goddess who represents certain things. And those certain things are protection, wisdom, righteousness, order, all these concepts, right being, good morality, truth and justice, and good order to stay away from chaos. Even the enemy has to steal from Yahweh's sense of structure in order to maintain his wicked control over the nations. He just inverts and perverts all of the righteous principles of Yahweh and turns them into knowledge falsely so called. See what I'm saying? Turns them into a righteousness where the Son of Yahweh has to come and say, your righteousness has to be better than that of those people over there if you want to get in the kingdom of heaven. Because what they're calling righteous is not really righteousness. So in the same way, in ancient Egypt, Their kings told the people, be a good citizen. Do what's right. And here's how we define for you to do what's right, to honor Ma'at, to honor the theology, the philosophy of what we have said is right. And that authority comes from the home of the supreme deity we worship. Okay? So I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm just trying to talk slowly through this, because this is stuff that trips up a lot of people in trying to understand personification of concepts, as the Egyptian writings, all the ancient writings would do when it comes to expressing the different attributes of how they wanted people to obey and worship their gods. Okay. Thanks for kicking out these spammers in the chat, folks. Appreciate that. So therefore, whenever you see an Egyptian hieroglyph or a female goddess with this feather in her hair, this is representative of Me'at. It's another representative of the sphere, because it is the knowledge, the civility, the quote unquote righteousness, the expected behavior of the sphere implied onto the people, which is the expected behavior Rob would teach the people. So there's just so much here, guys. Jeremiah, we'll pick back up in Jeremiah 17 through 18. Instead, these are the people speaking back to Jeremiah after he told them to repent. They say, instead, we will do everything we vowed. We will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, offering drink offerings to her, just as we and our fathers did in the city of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem. Because this is why they say, at that time when we were worshiping the Queen of Heaven, we had plenty of food, we had good things, we didn't see disaster. Because what had just happened with the Assyrians before Jeremiah, like when Jeremiah was a baby growing up, that generation when he was a baby and right before, they got invaded by Assyria and they got dispersed because for a long time they had rebelled against the covenant of Yahweh, and they started doing these practices of Babylon, and they started worshiping and offering incense and oblations and different types of human sacrifice to false gods, including the Queen of Heaven. And they thought that things were going well. And Yahweh kept warning them, hey guys, you've abandoned my covenant. You're transgressing my law. The agreement that we made, your priests are defiling my temples. You're partnering in illicit deals with Assyria, and all it's going to do is cause you to get invaded by them. And that's what happened. So then once they get invaded, they still haven't learned their lesson. Jeremiah's trying to call them to repent, even after they're scattered to a different country, but they're still so brainwashed by the system. They're indoctrinated by the system of Babylon, that even in the land of their oppression, in the land of their scattering in Egypt, a good righteous prophet of Yahweh sent to them to tell them how to get out of their bad circumstance. And they say, no, we're good. We were good. We were good worshiping the Queen of Heaven. We had everything we wanted. And then we stopped, and then all this bad stuff happened. But that's not exactly how that went down. Yahweh was trying to get them to stop doing horrific things in order to do good stuff, so that they could stay in the land and be secure and protected. So this is the amount of indoctrinated brainwashing that these people had already undergone, because of their dedication to worshiping literally the personification of the home of Ra. Isaiah 47, 5-7. Isaiah prophesies, sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of Chaldea, for you will no longer be called the queen of kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage, and I placed them under your control. This is Yahweh speaking through the prophet. You showed them no mercy. Even on the elderly you laid a most heavy yoke. You said, I will be a queen forever. You did not take these things to heart or consider their outcome. So now hear this, O lover of luxury who sits securely, who says to herself, I am and there is none besides me. I will never be a widow or know the loss of children. These two things will overtake you in a moment, in a single day, loss of children and widowhood. They will come upon you in full measure in spite of your many sorceries and the potency of your spells. You were secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and knowledge led you astray. You told yourself, I am, and there is none besides me. But disaster will come upon you. You will not know how to charm it away. A calamity will befall you that you will be unable to ward off. Devastation will happen to you suddenly and unexpectedly. So take your stand with your spells and with your many sorceries, and with which you have wearied yourself from your youth. Perhaps you will succeed. Perhaps you will inspire terror. He's being rhetorical. You are wearied by your many counselors. Let them come forward now and save you. Your astrologers who observe the stars, who monthly predict your fate, surely they are like stubble. The fire will burn them up. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. It's basically saying your prognosticators, the people, your counselors, everyone involved in this hierarchical system. Daughter of Chaldea, many people believe he's speaking to Babylon at the time. Babylon did not get destroyed anytime soon on the ground, run by Nebuchadnezzar for another 400 or 500 years. In the context of all this, I believe he's actually speaking to the Queen of Heaven. He's speaking to the false god and telling her this is what's going to happen because you think no one sees you, because you've labored with sorcery from your youth. And this is all consistent with the descriptions of the Eye of Ra throughout the nations. Revelation 18, 1-3. And after this, I saw another angel descending from heaven with great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his glory, and he cried out in a mighty voice, Fallen is Babylon the Great. She's become a lair of demons and a haunt of every unclean spirit, every unclean bird, every detestable beast. All the nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her immorality. Now, this is in the days of John, the Revelator, on the island of Patmos, 1st century AD, which is about 800 years after what we just read from Isaiah. And he's still talking about Babylon the Great, who falls, whom interacted with all the nations, whom the kings of the earth were immoral with her, personified as a her. The merchants of the earth have grown wealthy from the extravagance of her luxury. So there's a concept here. This is not the ground-based kingdom of Babylon that we see talked about in Daniel. This is something that still is existing, and according to the context of Revelation 18, 19, and 20, is still in existence when the 42 months begins. So it's very interesting to me that this mother Babylon is being spoken of as something that's going to be fallen. And repeating the same words that we see from daughter of Chaldea, Babylon, being spoken to in Isaiah 47. Verse 4-7 in Revelation 18 goes on to say, Then I heard another voice from heaven say, Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins or contract any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to the heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Give back to her as she has done to others. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion in her own cup. As much as she has glorified herself and lived in luxury, give her the same measure of torment and grief. In her heart, she says, I sit as queen. I'm not a widow, and I will never see grief. So when we look at this concept as what is the source of the deceptions that we see perpetrated throughout the earth and throughout this false system that ancient Egypt followed, as well as the other nations? And ultimately, it's very simple. From everything we've just described, the symbolism, the concepts, it's very simple. It's the Eye of Ra, which is the abode, the home of actual Ra. Ra is the equivalent in the Hebrew as the Satan character, the Azazel character. From Ra, we're going to read some more texts here in a minute that break down a lot of these concepts. So I'm actually going to show you this little graph here and preface some of the texts that we're going to read, but it also is adding to some of the stuff we've already studied and read. From Ra comes all magic and pharmakia. It's a false reality that's painted. It's a false healing. It's a lie. It's a twisting of concepts. Make you better by changing your DNA or altering your structure. No, it just makes you worse. It's a lie. Cosmic order, as we've talked about before. The idea of the cosmos kratos, the cosmic powers that Paul's referencing in Ephesians. The idea that Satan, just like Jubilees chapter 10 and 1 Enoch chapter 10, expounds to us, Azazel, also called Satan, was given control of 10% of the unclean spirits that were still on the earth after the flood. The other 90% were locked away. So he has power over the cosmic order. Those are the ones who are referred to as his messengers that he sends out to do his bidding. They're like an evil priesthood. He also is the center point of all governing authority. The nations look to the Eye of Ra and the God who is in the eye. the God who is the eye. Actual ma'at, according to the Egyptian word, which is the law and the ethics that extends down from the eye of Ra. That is the expectation of behavior, as well as the law and all of its twisting. That is with the corrupt justice systems that just do what they want to get the outcome they want. This also happened in ancient Egypt. So the corrupt law and ethics is also extending down from the eye, as well as worship. I want you to worship this eye of Ra. They want you. This was accepted worship. There were temples to Artemis. We read about them in the Investigating Babylon series. I think it was in I want to say it was in part 14. I think part 14 maybe. We talked about the some of the different rituals in ancient Turkey where they had a temple to Artemis, and they would have like a running event where they'd run up to the top of the mountain and different things. But also worship Isis, Astarte, as you know, the different versions of this goddess. And then we looked at the concept of the eye as being called the source in the movie, the Matrix Revolutions movie from 2003. This big black floating spherical machine with little spikes sticking out all over it that pops up in front of Neo. And that is the source from all things in the Matrix that are happening. The false reality that painted through the Matrix, all information and expectation and enforcement of behavior is happening in the Matrix. All reverence and respect and worship is dictated and controlled by the source that Neo has to go see. So I think it's very interesting. Very interesting. Same thing with the Tomorrowland movie we saw, the sphere that was connected at this science, this super high tech city in this alternate reality. In this Disney movie Tomorrowland that we looked at, the sphere connected by electricity to this large Tower of Babel looking structure. And that sphere was what controlled the collective reality of all the people on the earth, and it controlled them through their fear. And so this is very, right there with the ancient concepts of the Eye of Ra. So if we look real quick at the Eye of Ra, whom we've also connected as the Mother Babylon being spoken of in Revelation 18, we've done this previously in the series. Like I've said, everyone, that was an intro to these concepts, and the 42 series is kind of like the advance. We're going to dive deeper into all these concepts. So the Eye of Ra is Mother Babylon, but all of it is just a false version of what the Father is going to do with the kingdom of God, also known as Mother Jerusalem, where he's going to offer true healing and medicine from his kingdom, not false magic and pharmakia. He's going to offer true healing and medicine. He's going to offer a hierarchy of resurrected priests and angels who are going to be considered spiritual beings that are not unclean, but they're clean. They're righteous in every regard, doing perfectly the behavior of Yahweh and ministering to all the mortals who live outside of the massive house of God, the Mother Jerusalem, the kingdom of God. So they're going to be sent out to teach and do good, as opposed to the cosmic powers, the unclean spirits that are sent out to do the wickedness under the control of Ra. All nations and all kings will bring their wealth and bow down to Yeshua at the kingdom of God, at the Mother Jerusalem. This is expressed in Isaiah chapter 61 and Revelation 21. Isaiah 2 and Micah 4, Micah chapter 1, talks to us about how Yahweh's law, his Torah, will go to all the nations and be taught to all the nations with justice. And there will be appropriate judgment and rulership and administration and bureaucracy, if I could use that word, that extends from the authority from the kingdom of God, also known as the Mother Jerusalem. And of course, worship. It's going to be a wonderful place where people collect themselves and gather to show reverence and respect and worship and fall further in love with the creator of heaven and earth and his son, Yeshua, both on new moons and appointed times and every weekly Sabbath. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to be every single weekly Sabbath. Depends on their radius, but in the beginning, it definitely will be. the beginning of the millennial reign. So the whole concept of the Eye of Ra being the home of Satan and also the extension of all these ideas is just Satan mimicking what God is already going to do. What God has been promising through his prophets this whole time, what he wants to do with the earth and what he's going to do with the earth when he actually rolls the firmament back and comes down, he is son in their house. So this is the great comparison between the false version that creates chaos, destruction, disorder, pain, versus the promise of the kingdom of God is that he's going to bring these things positively to the earth, and he'll be here forever when he arrives. It's going to be amazing. So let's look real quick at something that's fascinating, guys. I'll read this real quick, but just there's a lot of ancient literature that we find in ancient nations, specifically with ancient Egypt, that I don't feel comfortable reading on the channel because I don't want to encourage other people to go read it. Much of them actually have spells inside of them, so I don't want to be like trying to repeat any of that stuff. But there's a unique book from approximately 1800 BC from ancient Egypt called the Book of the Heavenly Cow. It's been, it's well known in academia, and it's got multiple scholars since the 1800s have offered their translations for it. And I think this translation that I'm going to read from today comes from 1996. But approximately 1850 BC, an ancient Egyptian text thought to have originated during the Amarna period, and in part it describes the reasons for the imperfect state of the world in terms of humankind's rebellion against the supreme god Ra. Divine punishment was inflicted through the goddess Hathor. What do we read about? That's the female personification goddess of the actual sphere of Ra, the all-seeing eye. And with the survivors suffering through separation from Ra, who now resided in the sky on the back of Newt, the heavenly cow. And we're going to express what the cow is and what Newt is and all this stuff as we read a couple passages from this ancient book of the heavenly cow. So in lines 46 through 55, it says, "Then said the majesty of Nu." So real quick, Nu is in the Egyptians' pantheon. Nu is not an actual embodiment god. It was actually a personification of a god. It's a personification of a concept that they personified as a god who was said to be the creator of Ra himself, and it was the primordial waters. So the waters of the ancient waters, and I think this is funny because, like, if we understand the biblical description of angels, it would make perfect sense that you would say Ra, who's a rebellious angel, was created from waters, because this in the beginning was just heavens and the earth was filled with water, and angels are beings that are made of water and spirit. So that's very interesting that basically what Ra did with creating this theology is he would say, okay, well, I'm going to take the substance from which I was made, and I'm going to call that its own God, and we're going to call it Nu, in you. Sometimes in some texts you'll see it as in you, in none. And we're going to call the substance from which I was made Nun, and I'm going to personify that in story form as an actual God who I interact with. And there in this text, Nu addresses Ra and says, "You've become greater than me who created you." So it's fascinating, the lies and that he's just made up to create a story, right? This is his own Dianetics version, right? This is his own Ninu and Xenoth, and what's that that crazy religion where the gods come out of the volcanoes, whatever that is. But he's made up his own theology, his own false belief system, and he's just taken certain aspects of reality and made them into personifications of God. So that's where you're going to read about this concept of Nu. We're also going to see Ra. We're going to see Nut is the Nut is the female personification god of the actual firmament that supports the waters above the earth. It's very important to understand this concept as we read some of this stuff. So then the majesty of Nu, my son, then said the majesty of Nu, my son Shu, your eyes shall serve your father Ra as his protection. So then there's a thing that's considered the son of Ra, who built this thing called the eye, whom then the personified God, who's considered the creator of Ra, is telling the grandson, basically, give your eye to your father. He needs it for his protection. My daughter Newt, that's the firmament, you shall place him upon your back. And then the firmament replied, Newt replied, yet how, my father knew? Then Newt said, don't be silly, Newt. And so Newt became a cow. So earlier, when we read about the book of the heavenly cow, it's actually, you could transpose the word heavenly cow for the book of the firmament, because the personification of the firmament became embodied in the look of a cow for the sake of the story. And all of this, the context to all of this was how Ra dealt with mankind rebelling against him, which I think is fascinating. So the personified God, who's the parent of Ra, when this is not the creator of heaven and earth, this is not Yahweh. This was the waters that Ra was created from, that now is personified as a god, is telling the grandson, hey, give your eye to Ra. He needs it for his protection. So then the majesty of Ra placed himself upon her back. So now he's in the eye, and then he's going to place himself on the back of the cow, which is, the cow is the personification of the firmament. The majesty of Ra in the eye placed himself on the firmament. Thereupon these men came, and it gets jumbled. The text isn't complete, so the translator translated what he had. Thereupon these men came from, and they saw him on the back of this cow. Then these men said to him, have you rebelled against, and then it doesn't say who rebelled against him, but we know it's speaking about mankind rebelled against him. And these men said to Ra, we have come to you so that we might overthrow your enemies who plotted against those who created them. And then Ra responds, his majesty proceeded to his palace on the back of this cow. In the Egyptian text, we're reading about, even though the ideas are traded for other things, we're reading about the concept. Ra gets into his palace, which is called the eye, whom someone built for him, and connects it to the firmament. This is what I've been talking about for 5 years. And I tried to show in part 20 of our Investigating Babylon series, which is the idea that through multiple real experimental demonstrable science experiments, you can show through quantum levitation that not only could you levitate a large spherical landmass through basic chemistry, but then through quantum levitation, you could actually attach it to the power coming off of the firmament and literally be stuck in perpetual suspended movement on the firmament. This is the ancient Egyptians speaking with their highly poetic personification language about the same idea. So it goes on in verses 99 through 111 in this book. It says, moreover, guard against those magicians who know their spells. Since the god, this is Ra speaking, by the way, since the god magic, he is therein. Now, as for the one who ingests him, there I am. So now he's equating himself directly to magic. The guardian of me originated not through greatness. It originated even before me. I commended them, the snakes, to your son Osiris. Keep watch over the youngest of them and cause the hearts of the oldest of them there to forget their magical power, they who act as they please against the whole world, using their magic which is in their bodies. Then said the majesty of this god, then said Ra, please summon Thoth to me. So he was brought immediately to him. This is a personification. Thoth is another version of Hermes, of Anubis. So then he summoned Thoth. Look, I'm here in the sky in my abode. So Anubis is summoned to him. And he says, here I am. You came to me. Look, here you came to me in the sky in my abode. I'm just going to let you guys take that in for a minute, because just in case it wasn't super clear from the Investigating Babylon series, this is the Egyptian texts, highly venerated, found in one of the ancient pharaohs' tombs or coffins or whatever, from approximately What would we say? 18th century BC. So we're looking at almost 2000 BC. So like almost 4,000 years ago. So pretty close to the Tower of Babel is where they equate this text. Ra is saying, "I live in the sky." We get the and specifically because mankind had rebelled against him. So now he doesn't feel comfortable just to hang out on the ground anymore. So we get the origination of the eye, which is called his palace, his abode in the sky. So then he goes on to say, since I'm going to produce the light of sunshine in the underworld in the Isle of the Twin Bas, located in the underworld, you shall do writing there and calm down for me those who are therein, beings of our own making who fomented rebellion, namely the earthly gods, followers of this inscribable one, the god Set. You are to be in my place, my vicar. Thus you shall be called Thoth, the vicar of Ra. So many of you guys have probably seen this horrible movie. Oh my goodness. This horrible movie from like 2017 is The Gods of Egypt. And it's bad. But there's this, it's a horrible CGI, horrible, bad movie. Dumb in the plot and everything. But it's dealing with Ra and Osiris. And at this one moment, you've got a god who one of the gods of Egypt, transforms into this bird and goes up to the abode of Ra. And this is the old man Ra sharpening this at the millstone. This is Osiris, by the way, who flew up this young human. And Osiris is now going to be, Osiris the giant is now talking to Ra. And as you can see in the background at the top of the stairs are the wings as well as the sphere. But Ra is actually in this white garb standing there at the millstone. Guys, he has a millstone on the abode of Ra in the sky. Well, we've been talking about since the Investigating Babylon series. The prophecy in Revelation 18, like a great millstone, I will throw you down. With violence, you'll be destroyed. This is the promise from Yahweh to Mother Babylon. So in the actual depiction from Hollywood, the abode of Ra in the sky in this ridiculous movie, they actually introduce Ra sharpening his sword on a millstone. It's amazing. It's amazing. So they go through and they talk, but then Ra's going to stand up because he has to go fight off the serpent. And he's going to transform into his flaming form. Because what do we see in Psalm 104? In Hebrews 1:14, they're ministers of flame and fire. Angels are ministers of flame and fire. So he's going to flame on. He's going to turn, he grows bigger than Osiris, and he also turns into his flaming form with his actual pharaonic crown, as well as the symbol of the Eye of Ra on his crown itself. Now, this, of course, is the ancient Egyptian lore. So they talk about it being a flat earth where he's literally pulling the sun as he travels through, and he's going to pull it down into the underworld, which is the other side of the flat earth in the Egyptian lore. And so this is where the rest of this takes place, and he has to fight off this big serpent or whatever. So it's a crazy movie. It's silly. I don't recommend watching it just because it's such bad writing and CGI. But ultimately, they show all this stuff. They show it all in this movie. It's fascinating. So here we have we'll continue back in the book of the Heavenly Luminary, because now we're going to see Ra talking about being the flaming one. This is in verses 151 through 158. It says, I know the name or the soul of that god whose face is that of Asarphes, the ram-headed god of Heracleopolis, in whom the soul, which is the Egyptian word Ba, of Ra and Osiris are combined. This is what I've talked about in the past, where we see in Revelation 13 that the dragon, who is Ra, who is Satan, he gives his authority to the first beast, that is Osiris, Apollyon. They share authority, and all the world is trying to now follow after Apollyon. So yes, the dragon still retains his authority because it's shared. This was the story of Ra and Osiris. It's always been the same. Goes on to say, I'm the one to whom an amulet is affixed in the evening. I am Ra amid his Ennead. His Ennead is basically his the 9 gods of Egypt, who is part of his council, his entourage with magical power. I shall pass by uninjured, for I am one belonging to the flame, which is the soul of fire. I have no eradicators among men, gods, spirits, and the dead, or anything in this whole world. Words spoken by these gods who have proceeded to life in the light of heaven. The gods are to be informed so that their hands are at their faces, and he is allowed to pass by upon the road. And so the flaming one, who was brought into being in the sky, as for any able scribe who knows the divine words that are in his mouth, he can ascend and descend within the sky. Okay, sorry guys, I just had to cough. Lots of coughing tonight. So it goes on to say in lines, or actually previously in lines 143 through 149, I wanted to save this for last because this is fascinating. This is fascinating, guys. We've talked about Ra. The whole purpose of this ancient Egyptian text was to give this story to the people that Ra, there was a rebellion of mankind against Ra. I'm guessing that's the Tower of Babel moment, because this book is dated right around that time. And at that time, he said, I need to go live in the sky. So he goes, builds him a palace in the sky. And then he actually teaches the people how to pray to him. And listen to what he wants the people to pray. This is in lines 143 through 149. Recite, O you, Ra, to whom Thoth gives praise, while the dignity of heaven is upon you, and toward whom Shu extends his arms. May you save me from those 2 great and mighty gods who dwell in the east of the sky, who guard heaven and guard earth, and who are with enduring mysteries. What do you guys think he's talking about? I'll give it a minute. Tell me in the live chat. I'll read it again. Ra teaches the people to pray to him and says, O you, Ra, to whom Thoth gives praise, while the dignity of heaven is upon you, and toward whom Shu extends his arms. So that means these other gods worship Ra. He's the top of their pantheon. May you save me from those 2 great and mighty gods who dwell in the east of the sky, who guard heaven and guard earth, and who are with enduring mysteries. What does Enoch 105 promise us? Yahweh promises, me and my son will come and dwell amongst mankind. So that means Ra's got to get kicked out of the way. In the ancient Egyptian text, Satan, as the form of God, the god Ra to the Egyptians, is teaching the people to hate Yahweh and his son and to look to him for protection. This is the narrative that I've been telling you guys about. This is the narrative that I believe is going to be rehashed and reintroduced to the world whenever the sphere, the home, the Eye of Ra, is reintroduced to the world. Just like the video games that keep pushing this stuff, when the Traveler shows back up. And the world worships him. And this is before the 42 months truly kicks off. This is a part, the final culmination of the breakaway civilization, like we talked about from the first installment, part 21 of the 42 series. Funneling all resources, wealth, while at the same time getting you to fall in line with Ma'ats, with their social credit idea of enforced behavior. So that by the time they reintroduce the progenitor, the what do they call him? The panspermia god, right? The one that they've been pushing in heliocentric narratives, that there's a returning alien and he's probably just us from the past, right? He's probably the one who seeded life on the earth and created the evolutionary process here. And he's probably going to come back someday. This is what mainstream people like Lawrence Krauss and Neil deGrasse Tyson have been openly saying. They're pushing a theology with no proof, no scientific evidence. And it falls right in line with the story of Ra, Satan, in a sphere, showing himself to the world again. And there will be a time when he's accepted, as it says in Revelation 12 and 13, the world worships after him, and he doesn't like the saints. He persecutes them. But there's a time, as we're going to talk about, when Yahweh's like, all right, I'm going to interrupt your plans. And that's when the 42 kicks off. But he's openly acknowledging whom he fears. Ra is openly acknowledging in the prayer he teaches to his disciples, the people that worship him. He's telling them who he fears. The two great and mighty gods who dwell in the east of the sky. So let's look at some interesting stuff real quick. Numbers 24:17. This is actually Balaam before he's killed by Moses. This is actually Balaam has a moment of prophecy. And he says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come forth from Jacob, and a scepter will arise from Israel. He will crush the skulls of Moab and strike down all the sons of Set. Interesting, right? What's this star that comes forth from Jacob? Zechariah chapter 6, 12 and 13. And you are to tell him that this is what the Lord of hosts says. Here is a man whose name is the branch. And he will branch out from this place and build the temple of the Lord. Yes, he will build the temple of the Lord. He will be clothed in splendor, and he will sit on his throne and rule. He will be a priest, and on his throne there will be peaceful counsel between the two. Interesting, right? Another wonderful prophecy of Yeshua, our Messiah sent to become our high priest. But he's called the branch. He's also referred to as the star rising in the east. We're going to go into the detail about what this is, because in the KJV, the NSB, the Berean Study Bible, most common translations, they call this the branch in Zechariah 6:12. But what's fascinating is that if you look in the original Greek, which the Douay Rheims, the Septuagint actually still calls in the branch, but that's the Brenton Septuagint's more modern translation of the Septuagint. But the Douay Rheims also pulls from the Latin Vulgate, which pulls from the Theodotion's 2nd century Septuagint. So this is why he uses this. It says, behold a man, the Orient is his name. Now this isn't referring to people from Asian nations. This isn't talking about use of the word Orient. It was a different meaning back then. But why did most of the translations in this prophecy call Yeshua the branch, but then in specifically pulling from the Latin Vulgate, coming from the 2nd century Septuagint, why did they pull this word, the Orient? What does that mean? So if we go and we look this up, it's actually Strong's G 395. That's the word G is for the Greek 395. And it's this unique word. I don't know how to actually say it. I think it's like Anatolia, but it means the rising of the sun, also the east. So no wonder in Matthew 2, 1 through 2, people that had the Septuagint of their scriptures during that day show up after Jesus is born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod. The wise men, the sages, the Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem asking, where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. Excuse me, guys. You know the star that's rising forth out of Jacob, the one whose name will be called the branch? Some translations say the east. The Magi come saying, we saw his star in the east and we come to worship him. Where is the King of the Jews? So if we go back to this ancient Egyptian text, where these people are being taught to pray for Ra's protection against the two great and mighty gods who dwell in the east of the sky. I don't think this is a coincidence. So let's look at another personification of Mother Babylon, which is the three-headed eagle. And we actually see this personified in the three-headed Vishnu. We see it in the three-headed Diana, what's also called the triad, the Greek triad, I believe, with the three-headed Diana. 2nd Ezra chapter 11, 1 through 2. Then I saw I dream. Behold, there came up from the sea an eagle which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. Now, guys, I want to highly encourage, read all of 2nd Ezra 11 and 12. I'm giving pertinent parts here because it's going over kingdoms and different rulers from within those kingdoms and trying to break them down to you. But just like Daniel 7 and just like the kings that are mentioned in Revelation 17, It spread throughout all of time, both from before Ezra to the days of Ezra to the days of the end of Judea to all the way to the end of the consummation of the age with the return of Yeshua. So there's a lot going on here. Trying to give you the pertinent parts. All right. So behold, they came up from the sea, an eagle which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her and were gathered together. But her heads were at rest. The head in the middle was greater than the others, yet rested with the residue. Moreover, I beheld the eagle flew with her feathers and reigned upon the earth, and over them that dwell therein. I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spoke against her. No, not one creature upon the earth. 2 Ezra 11, 7-9 says, And I beheld the eagle rose upon her talons and spoke to her feathers, saying, Watch not all at once. Sleep everyone in his own place, and watch in your own course, right? Watch by course. But let the heads be preserved for the last. So the 3 heads of the eagle are talking, the feathers represents different forms of rulers underneath the grand authority of the 3-headed eagle. And verse 29 through 31, 2 Ezra 11, it says, And when they saw, and when they so thought, behold, there awoke one of the heads that were at rest, namely, it was the one in the middle, for that was the greater than the 2 other heads. Then I saw that the 2 other heads were joined with it, so they're in unity with their authority. Behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the 2 feathers under the wing that would have reigned. But this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression. It had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. Verse 33 and 34 says, And after this I beheld the head that was in the middle suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings, but there remained the 2 heads, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth and over those that dwelt therein. And it came to pass, this is chapter 12, verse 1 through 3, and it came to pass while the lion spoke these words unto the eagle, I saw the head that remained, and the 4 wings appeared no more, and the 2 went into it and set themselves up to reign. And their kingdom was small and full of uproar. Behold, they appeared no more, and the whole body of the eagle was burnt, so that the earth was in great fear. So the concept of the 3-headed eagle, the whole body of it ends up being burnt. The whole authority of it. Numbers 31, 5-6. So just keep that in mind, that prophecy from Ezra in mind. We're going to lead into some other things in Revelation and explain more about the destruction of Mother Babylon. So in Numbers 31, 5-6, so 1,000 men were recruited from each tribe of Israel, 12,000 armed for war, and Moses sent 1,000 from each tribe into battle, along with Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, who took with him the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for signaling. Because in ancient Israel, according to God's instructions, he wanted his priests to signal with trumpets that war was happening, or to direct people during war. Joshua 6:20, the priest sounded with the trumpets. When the people heard the trumpets, all the people shouted at once with a loud and strong shout, and all the wall fell round about, and all the people went up into the city. This was an attack on Jericho. 2 Chronicles 13:12, Now behold, God himself is with us as our head, and his priests with their trumpets sound the battle call against you. O children of Israel, do not fight against the Lord, the God of your fathers, for you will not succeed. Revelation 8:6-9. And the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. Then the first angel sounded his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled down upon the earth. 1/3 of the earth was burned up, along with 1/3 of the trees and all the green grass. Then the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea turned to blood, 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. So the head of the eagle that's burned, whole body's burned, is the same one that's thrown down with violence like a millstone in Revelation 18. As if you're new to the channel, I just want to let you know we've done a great breakdowns in Revelation. It's not chronological. There's bulks of chapters that start to fill up a certain amount of time in chronology and then stop, and then it kind of like resets and gives a different angle and talks about a different view of the same event. So there's a lot of repeating things from different perspectives. The whole book of Revelation is not chronological. Right. So all the visions that are being had from chapter 4 to chapter 22, they're not in chronological order. So when it's explaining the 7 trumpets being blown by the 7 angels, the first 2 trumpets, blood mixed with hail and fire is thrown down upon the earth. Second trumpet, something like a large mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. I would say that's Mother Babylon that's been hit with the fire being thrown down from heaven from the first trumpet. And we see in the Testament of Levi, chapter 3, verse 2, that the layer of the firmament, the second heaven, has fire, snow, and ice made ready for the day of judgment, and in the righteous judgment of God. For in it are all the spirits of the retributions of vengeance on men. Now, this is where the context really comes in, which is what I'm trying to help with. And I've tried to help in my Investigating Babylon series as well, as putting all these things together to show who we're looking at as the eschatology unfolds in the book of Revelation, so you can have a better grasp on it. But the day of judgment is not just a singular day. It is the time period when the 42 begins. The great day is when Yeshua actually comes back. It's called the day of the Lord. But there's a judgment that begins at the beginning of the 42 months, which is when Mother Babylon is actually thrown down. And I'm trying to show you the mechanism by which it's thrown out of the sky. Trumpets are blown, fire from heaven actually falls, and guess what's between the firmament, the heaven above, and the earth? Mother Babylon. So it's going to get hit with fire. And this is what we've reviewed, that Daniel 12, 1-3. That's the time period. At that time, Michael, the great prince who stands watch over your people, will rise up. So what does it mean that he rises up? If we look into the Strongs for this word, it's to take a stand, to take one stand. Specifically, when you look at its uses, a little bit deeper dig on the Hebrew word, you see that, or it's actually the Aramaic word, you see that it's used in many, many verses specifically pertaining to war or to appear, to come on the scene to help. So the angel, the archangel that's been assigned over the nation of Israel, over the body of believers. Yeshua is the high priest over Michael. Michael is under Yeshua's authority, but he's considered the prince, or the angel that's been assigned as the watcher over the children of Israel, if you will. Okay. And he is actually going to get involved at one point, just like we see other examples in scripture where God sends the angels to actually get involved at one point, like in the days of Hezekiah, Isaiah 37, the Assyrians with 185,000 men surround Jerusalem to besiege it. An angel actually shows up. I think it's the book of Baruch that tells us it's actually Raphael. Might be mistaken on that. But there are many times in the scriptures where things get bad, and Yahweh sends one of his actual angels, one of his flaming ones. Except Michael is a much stronger angel than Azazel, the Satan character. Okay? This is why in Revelation 12, 7-9, we see a war broke out in heaven. And as we've tried to express in great detail in the past, that doesn't mean above the firmament, but it's in the sky above. It's one of the other uses for the term. You have to look for the context. Michael and his angels, that's his messengers, his servants, fought against the dragon, that's Ra, that's Azazel, that's Zeus. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels, his messengers, his unclean spirits, they fought back. But the dragon was not strong enough, and no longer was any place found in heaven for the dragon and his unclean spirit angels. And the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, and the deceiver of the whole world. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels, that's his messengers, his servants, were hurled down with him. And this word is the word Aranaus, used in the Greek for in this passage, and it is the heaven, the visible heavens, the atmosphere, the sky, the starry heavens, or the spiritual heavens. So it can be used of these different concepts of the sky itself, which is why it's thrown down, because they're not actually above the firmament in the spiritual heavens. They're in the sky above, which is where the Eye of Ra has always said to been, the palace, the home, the abode of Satan. So if we take a deeper look at the creation model, and we can see the multi-7-layered firmament that is described throughout Scripture that's been created, with the house of God at the top layer, the New Jerusalem in the third layer, 2 Corinthians 12 explains to us, the sun and moon approximately in the second layer, and then the layer above our enclosure, our firmament, is still enclosed with water, and then the earth is below our enclosure, where the water receded and the dry land appeared. But if we take a deeper look into this creation model, we see this is the moon, this is the sun outside of our enclosure, and this is Mother Babylon's location approximately, in just to give you some perspective. So therefore, when this fire falls, it's falling on her. This is why there's a great mountain upon the second trumpet. A great mountain is thrown out of the sky, falls into the sea, burning. So I hope that I've been able to bring a little bit more clarity to the idea, not just with building in more context to how the Father judges, the correlation of the relationship of the angels, their history of where they came from, their deceptions, and the different ways they deceived mankind, what the ancient nations who worshipped Satan and what they called him, what they thought of him, what they clearly knew where his home was. Think about, we introduced that book of the firmament, also called the Book of the Heavenly Cow. What was the premise of that book? The premise is that Ra is afraid. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Where did that go? Where did that slide go? I wonder if I skipped that slide accidentally. Okay, sorry. I thought I put it in here. Man, that's weird. All right, I'll read it to you just then from the text. I don't have a slide prepared for it, but I'll just read it to you. But this is in 46 through 55. Yeah, it says, then the majesty of Nu said, No, I did read that. Okay, never mind. Wait a minute. Did I? Yeah, I did read that. Okay. Yeah, just clearly clarifying to the people that are watching that the ancient Egyptians knew Ra lived in a palace in the sky. Specifically attached to Newt, their goddess, who's personified as the firmament. They knew they lived in an enclosed creation. That was part of their theology as well. And a part of their religious belief of where is the supreme deity that they worshipped and where is he? They were told where he was. Specifically, he was in his palace, connected to the enclosure above them, high in the sky. And that the gods would traverse back and forth. And those, the wise scribes who had the right words also could ascend and descend within the sky. I don't know exactly the details of what that meant or what that inference is. Sounds more like, special people, super special people that get, elevated in trust in that pantheon. But ultimately, we basically have in their own text, they understood Ra lived in a palace in the sky connected to the firmament. And I got to say, guys, this is what's wild to me is that was just my speculation on when I figured out what actually was causing eclipses and what the Eye of Ra was before I even found that text of, from the ancient Egyptian text, the Book of the Heavenly Cow, that explicitly says it. I was just practically trying to say, okay, if I have the context of the creation model, where would this thing be? It would have to be in the sky. And then I start seeing all these references in the ancient cultures about the gods living in the sky in a palace. So this is why it has to be thrown down. It has to be, because who's coming? Yeshua and all his angels are coming that way. So what's interesting is they throw it down at the beginning of the 42 months. And as next week, we're going to be delving deeper into the Phoenix. It won't be next week. It'll be 2 weeks from now. We'll be delving deeper into the Phoenix, who is his right-hand man, the one whom his soul is shared with, the idea of Osiris, who he gives his authority to rule and reign over the people, and he starts going and persecuting the saints. So we'll look deeper into Osiris and who the Phoenix was. Also, we'll call it Apollyon or Apollo to the Greeks. And so it's fascinating to me that there's truly nothing new under the sun. All this is just a story that's been rehashed. But we've been given so much deception in our modern day, we have to relearn ancient history just to understand what we're looking at now. This is why I think it's hard for me to articulate at this point. I'm going to try to in the future with a video, but when Yeshua showed up and lived and died and resurrected, and he was glorified and exalted to the right hand of the Father in his priestly position to minister for us on our behalf, and he now has the power to give the Spirit as he wills. He's got the shortcut to get to believers with goodness all over the earth, no matter where they are, to interrupt the plans of the enemy and bless the faithful. That changed the game greatly somehow. It truly interrupted, it truly caused Zeus, the one who tempted Yeshua in Luke 4, Matthew 4, it truly caused him to change his entire structure. Yes, for hundreds of years after, open idolatry was still happening, temples were still on the earth and being built, but because of the church, the believers spreading like wildfire, over time, the open practices of Ra worship, Zeus worship, Brahma worship, they went underground. And now everything is dealt in symbolism. And that's why it's called the occult. It's all hidden. It's a hidden religion. But their intended goal is to bring it back out to the mainstream. They don't want it to be hidden. They want it to be externalized back into the public. And so there was something interesting that's happened, is that you have Yeshua just completely causing them to change course. And like I said, it's hard for me to really articulate. I'm trying to do a good job with this, and I can't give you, I don't have a presentation prepared on that topic. It's a whole separate video by itself, but it's noticeable after studying all this stuff and seeing where they want to go to bring their old glory days back. It's noticeable how Yeshua caused them to change. And even when they try to bring their glory days back, they don't accomplish it, because Yeshua is still in control. He's still reigning, not on the earth, but he is in his position of authority in heaven over the Spirit of God to benefit man on the earth. And this is why we're suddenly going to see two prophets appear again like days of old. So there's a lot of fun stuff that happens when, at whatever moment, Yeshua tells Michael, now's the time, go take out the palace of Ra, go take out the eye of Ra, remove it from the sky. So then he and all of his unclean spirits are forced to the earth. They start persecuting mankind. We're going to do a whole video on the unclean spirits and the attacks of the Shadim during the 42 months. It's a part of this series. And it's just fascinating that this is what causes him further to scramble. So just in case you ever read Revelation and Revelation 12 and you didn't get it, that he lost, he's humiliated, he's debased, he's brought down to the ground where he doesn't want to be. And according to their ancient Egyptian text, he was afraid of mankind. Think about what we read, guys. He has to, in this fake story that he created to tell his people why he's not going to be on the ground with them anymore, I'm going to be in a palace in the sky now, is because mankind, I didn't read the whole text to you. You have to read it yourself if you want, but he has this conversation with his other gods, and then tries to tell this story to the people in this text, that because mankind rebelled against him, he wanted to slaughter all of mankind, but he can't. He did send out Hathor, and a personification of the Eye of Ra, to go out, and she killed a whole bunch of people, but then he had to stop her. And there's a whole part of the book that explains how he had to stop her. He had to trick her into thinking that she had killed more than she really had. And then he calls her back because he couldn't kill all of mankind. He doesn't have the authority to do that. Even if that story is real, I don't even know if all the details of how he claimed to assert control over mankind again is even real. The whole premise of the story is why he is not on the ground now. It's because he was afraid of mankind, which is exactly, makes perfect sense. I mean, look what Yeshua teaches us. Submit yourself to God, resist Satan, and he will flee from you. And his unclean spirits. You can have authority over them. Gives you power to tread over scorpions and all unclean spirits. Like you can push them away from you if you do the behavior of Jesus Christ and walk in that authority. You don't have to be afraid of this guy, this deceiver who deceives the whole world. You don't have to be afraid of him. And that's why in Revelation 12, at the beginning, kicks off the 42 months, the trumpet blast starts happening. Michael stands up, kicks Satan out of the sky. He's now furious, goes down to the earth, He tries to persecute the saints. The two witnesses show up. You've got the drama that begins, and it's not a good look, if I could put it like this. It's not a good look for Satan. He has to defer to the first and second beast, who go out and with force try to conquer the nations and persecute the saints, and they're not even successful. We're going to go into that in future installments. Do not let Satan trick you to think that the story of God explaining to you the downfall of the enemy in Scripture, do not let that be a fearful thing for you. It's not. The whole story is explaining how he's weak and powerless. You serve the creator of heaven and earth. You have a high priest that has more authority than him. You have your brethren, the angels in heaven, under the authority of Yeshua, are sent out on your behalf. You are part of the family of God. You don't have to be worried. Bad times may happen. Perseverance may be required. Your faith may be tested. But the whole point of this is to tell you, he's with magic, he's deceiving people. He's not really that powerful, but he's going to try to hurt people. He can't steal your soul. You can't sell your soul to him. He has no control over your soul. Be encouraged, guys. The story of Revelation, the story of the eschatology of Scripture throughout all the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Ezra, all these guys, Yeshua himself explains these things. The whole thing points to you being protected by the Father. And even though this body may perish, the promise of the creator of heaven and earth is that the story's not over. Is that there'll be a time when Yeshua shows up, and if you've died already at that point, he will raise you back to eternal life to live and reign with him in his house forever. And you'll get to watch this great deceiver be chained up and locked in a hole in the ground. So I just want to greatly encourage you. The reason why is because there's a lot of things. Anyone that's listening to this, the sound of my voice, there is a lot of things in the culture right now and all across the world. Like I've said consistently throughout this series, I believe in the next 50 years, we're going to start seeing the implementation of the people trying to build habitations in the sky and get people to be comfortable living in the sky, because they'll have the reintroduction of the traveler, the Satan character. They won't call him Satan. They won't call him Ra. They won't call him Zeus. They won't call him Odin, but it's the same character. He'll come back in his spaceship because he's an alien, but he's really just one of us from thousands of years ago. He just has attained to enlightenment because he has superior tech. So we should trust him. And he's also telling us about these other aliens we need to be worried about that he sometimes has to fight with. So we should be on his side, get prepared when they show up. I truly believe that's the narrative that's going to be perpetrated over the whole earth for several generations, possibly 100 years, possibly 60 years, as the world becomes accustomed to knowing, there's something in the sky that we revere as our ruler, and all the earth is gravitating to become more comfortable with. Meanwhile, there'll be informed people that reject it, that know it's a lie, that know we don't live on a ball in space floating aimlessly in a crazy spiral, knowing that we're loved by a creator and created an enclosed atmosphere and protected, and he and his heavenly angels are above the firmament above us, and that this is the deceiver, the wicked one. We'll know the truth, but unfortunately, the masses have greater numbers. So if you are hearing this at any point, now or in the future, I do not want you to be deceived by the coming alien narrative. I want you to be encouraged. Your Heavenly Father and his Son are much greater, much, much greater than this rebellious angel. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, Maria. I really appreciate that super chat. Thank you. But if you have any questions, put them in all capitalization. That way I can see them. Moderators can see them easily. Moderators, if there are any questions from earlier that you remember, and you can actually scroll back up too, because my software doesn't let me scroll all the way back up to 2 hours ago. So you're welcome to copy paste them and repost them for me. I'll try to address them. But if I don't see any questions about some of the stuff we covered tonight, here in the next few minutes, then we'll call it a night. But hopefully it was explained thoroughly and sufficiently. That's always the goal. Mama Bear's asking, what's the sphere made of? No idea. No idea. Some sort of advanced tech, because it can cloak itself. So something, but I have no clue, honestly, the exact materials, like this exact alloys or whatnot. Elkins 25, yes. 1,000 times yes. Gene Riley's asking, could it be sooner than 1,600 years? Every time I mention that timeline, people really get worried. It's weird. It's like you'd think there would be some solace in that, but instead they get upset. I'm not saying, Gene, that you're upset, but I've seen this in the past. They get upset saying, there's no way it's going to be next week. It's going to be a year and a half from now. It's going to be 7 years from now. Like, people will get so upset when I postulate that it could be 50 to 100 years from now. Because of the qualifiers, guys. I can't say this enough. And Miss Jean, I know you're probably not the one asking this, but I would just, for everyone listening, guys, this is why I'm always mentioning this term, qualifiers. That this is part of context. Like with when God says, "Hey, these things will happen," and then you'll understand then the next part will happen. Everyone keeps focusing on the next part with ignoring the front part, the qualifiers that the Father told us would have to happen. So that's why I try to, break it down for you as simply as possible to remind people that the qualifiers are important, and that gives you a good indication of what's happening. So, that's why, unless those qualifiers are expedited greatly, and next week they say, oh, by the way, aliens have shown up and they're living in a massive sphere in the sky, and you can go visit them for, $10,000 for a day trip. So, I mean, unless that is expedited in some way at the current pace we're at, with how the government is revealing things, unveiling things, the organized, mass analysis of political science across the earth, everything that's involved in what we're seeing, they're still prepping people with propaganda to be comfortable with the idea of reintroducing Zeus to the world. So this is why I say that timeline. Nicholas, I'm not sure what you mean by justify working with AI. I don't know what you mean. Reconciled is asking, does Satan appear to mankind today? I would highly guess yes, to specific leaders to, enforce the ma'at, enforce the rule and the authority. Freedom for everyone except tyrants. Please go check out Investigating Babylon Part 7. I go into great depth and I break it down in great depth. In fact, I would highly encourage you, if this is your first time seeing the channel, check out Kingdom of Context playlists. We have the Investigating Babylon playlists, all 21 parts. I go into great depth, not only to explain who the beast is, but why he is that way, why, what's going on with him and everything involved. And I even said it multiple times tonight. So I'm not sure if you just joined us, but check those out. Check that playlist out when you have a chance. Emmanuel Morris is asking, is Mount Hermon and Enoch possible, that portal between Satan and Pallas and the fallen angels? No, guys, I personally don't believe, this is just me, I don't believe the science fiction idea of a portal. That word in Enoch is used for a doorway, a gateway, a physical structure that opens and closes. I don't believe in this mystical idea of transmutation of matter, that's dematerialized and rematerialized somewhere else and skips time and space. I think that's a modern invention. I truly think that they, as we discussed in the Investigating Babylon series, they have craft that can just go up there really quick, super quick, probably 30 seconds or less. Wasn't there a band called 30 Seconds to Mars? Highly occultic band. Sing about Nephilim ideology all the time. Interesting. So Yeah, I would say they don't need portals that defy the idea of. I don't believe that tech is real. I think that's non-proven science fiction tech. I don't think that the idea of a portal jumping space time and dematerializing matter is real. They already have the craft that can do it in a heartbeat. So Malice74 is asking, have you seen a video by Mr. BB33 where a family saw a dark dot in the sky that looked like the death? Yeah, I covered it in my last episode. Go check out part 21 of the 42 series. And I show a video of it and talk about it. In Busca da Verdade, I would said that right. I have not seen the entirety of that, so I don't have thoughts on it yet. I'm sorry. Kingdom, we've tried to talk about this in the past. 144,000 in the Contextual Revelation 7. That's after the resurrection, so that's not going to be. That's not going to have any bearing on some of the things that we're discussing leading up to the first resurrection. Freedom for Everyone except Tyrants is asking, I heard in that the land of Israel is to be desolated until the Messiah comes back. Old Testament prophecy. No, it's right before he comes back. It's invaded and destroyed. Like I would say, like within the week, all the armies assemble and gather and rampage Jerusalem and invade the land, and then move large amounts of forces up to the Valley of Jezreel in the north for the Valley of Armageddon, where they have to fight a bunch of angels when Yeshua returns soon. So no, I don't think that it does happen right before he comes back, but not like tomorrow or next week or next year. It's going to be very, very close. I would say within a week of the actual return of Messiah. So, and the whole land won't be decimated. It's just the areas where the armies are invading and having warfare. The whole land is decimated when Yeshua's angels show up. And I'll explain that in this series later, one of the future installments. General is asking, do you believe in extraterrestrial land outside the wall? I'm guessing you mean the firmaments that encloses us. It's hard for me to say. The scriptures doesn't describe anything like that. I don't put it past the possibility. I definitely don't think that we can access it, and it's not meant for us. It's for the angels. Because if you look at the creation model that I showed earlier, which is what's described as the seven domes on top of each other, there's space between the domes outside of us, left and right. But the scriptures describe the lands of heaven to be above us, where the angels live, in the firmament above us. So I don't know exactly what that looks like. Specifically, as if they have lands up there and then multiple levels all the way down. I think we'll get to explore in our resurrected bodies throughout eternity the amazing creation model that was made, because the heaven and the earth and everything, and even the luminaries will be renewed in the firmament. So I think it'll be fun. It'll be interesting, but it's not pertaining to us in our mortal bodies right now. There's no way we can get to it. It's not for us to get to. We wouldn't be able to exist. We would die. Okay, guys, I really appreciate that. Reconciled, no, it's not. It just tells us in Jubilees that there's a 10th that we're put under Satan's control. It doesn't tell you how many that 10th represents. So it's, yeah, I don't have an exact number for you. I'm sorry, but I do know that I think it's interesting. I have a speculative theory. So I can only say that it's very speculative that the locust-like things that come out, like these chimera locust-like things that come out in Revelation 9 with Apollyon, I theorize that. Well, no, I'm going to talk about that in later parts of this series. So I don't want to give away the goods, but I don't have an exact number for you. I'm sorry, brother. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Please sure to like and share this. Go subscribe to us on Rumble. Lighthouse is still coming out, and so that's going to be in the new year. So be ready to go subscribe to us over there as well. And we just give you, a ton of props for sticking through, these longer episodes with me, and for entertaining these ideas and testing them with me. Right? We always tell people to make sure you study the Bible for yourself, and a lot of these things, I know that it's the first time people are hearing them and they're trying to process it and understand it. And it's, it's a lot. That's why I said the 42 series is kind of an advanced series. And so if you've just found us because of this, I highly recommend that you turn off the 42 series and you go watch the Investigating Babylon series so you can have the proper groundwork for everything we're talking about. But ultimately, all of our regular subscribers, you guys are a blessing. All of our regular patrons, you guys are amazing, helping us stay active in what we're doing and create new things. Go sign up for the app, download it today. And we got some new things that are happening on that here in the next few weeks as well that I think you guys are going to like. So yeah, it's amazing. I feel privileged to be able to do this and that you guys are listening. And so we hope it's a blessing to you. It's our prayer that we can actually provide comprehension through context so that you guys are encouraging your faith and that you are able to give an answer when you're asked about your faith. And you're not deceived by the world. You can navigate through this with hope. So you guys be blessed. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.